The Temple Mount in Jerusalem has never been excavated, but an illegal construction project 20 years ago opened the door to some major discoveries.
Archaeologists weren't supposed to be scanning beneath the Temple Mount at all. Yet in 2024, an unauthorized AI survey captured something that no one can now explain. A sealed chamber carved into solid bedrock, perfectly preserved for nearly 3,000 years.
We have uncovered one of the most meaningful items that is a witness to one of the most dramatic events in the history of Jewish people.
Inside it lay a lead capsule containing an ancient scroll unlike anything ever found in Jerusalem. When experts tried to translate the first visible words, they froze. The message wasn't about faith or history, it was a warning. The forbidden dig beneath the mount. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came from the scanners. The radar images did not look like ordinary soil or random ruins. They showed straight lines, perfect angles, and deep symmetrical patterns hidden far below Jerusalem's Temple Mount. It looked like a structure that should not exist, buried beneath one of the holiest and most contested sites on the planet. When the researchers realized what they were seeing, no one spoke for several minutes. They understood what it meant. They had just seen something that human eyes were never supposed to see. The Temple Mount, or Haram al-Sharif as Muslims call it, has been a sacred flashpoint for more than 3,000 years. It is the heart of three major religions and the most politically sensitive ground on earth. For Jews, it is the site where Solomon's temple and later the Second Temple once stood. According to the Hebrew Bible, the inner chamber of the temple, known as the Holy of Holies, held the very presence of God. For Muslims, the same ground is where the Prophet Muhammad is believed to have ascended to heaven during the night journey, making it one of Islam's most revered locations. Even walking on the mount is forbidden to many Jewish believers because no one knows the exact location of the Holy of Holies. To step on that space by accident would be a serious act of desecration. For Muslims, allowing anyone to dig under the Al-Aqsa Mosque or the Dome of the Rock would be a violation of their faith and history. This is why no excavation has ever been legally allowed beneath the Temple Mount. In the late 19th century, British explorer Charles Warren tried to find the physical remains of Solomon's temple. He used ropes and torches to descend into ancient water tunnels around the mount, but he was forbidden to break ground beneath the sacred platform itself. His work revealed shafts, hidden passages, and massive stone walls, proving that a complex world existed under Jerusalem's surface. Yet he was forced to stop before reaching the mount. That limitation remained in place for more than a century. Archaeologists could only guess what was buried there. Between 2021 and 2024, a new generation of researchers found a way to look beneath the mount without disturbing a single stone. They combined ground-penetrating radar, which sends harmless radio waves deep into the earth, with artificial intelligence capable of processing enormous amounts of geological data. The AI compared thousands of modern scans with historical maps drawn by British surveyors almost 100 years ago. The results began as faint blurs, but within hours, distinct geometric outlines appeared on their screens. These were not natural formations. They were man-made chambers buried more than 30 feet below the surface. The patterns were too orderly, too precise, to be anything else. At first, the team thought they had found another layer of Jerusalem's ancient water system. But as the scans continued, the AI detected enclosed voids that were completely sealed off. There were no tunnels leading in or out, and no signs that anyone had touched them in nearly 3,000 years. The data showed a network of rooms built directly beneath the Temple Mount platform. That meant these chambers were older than Herod's expansions, older than the Second Temple, and possibly even older than the time of King Solomon himself. The deeper the scan went, the clearer the picture became. There was intelligent design behind it. The rooms were positioned with mathematical precision, aligned perfectly with the mount's eastern wall. It was as if an entire structure had been hidden under the holiest site on earth. The researchers understood the danger immediately. If news of this discovery leaked, it could ignite religious and political chaos. The Temple Mount has triggered violence before. In 1996, when Israeli authorities opened a tunnel near the mount, it sparked deadly riots that left more than 70 people dead across Jerusalem and the West Bank. Even a rumor about underground excavations has the power to bring the city to the edge of war. This memory haunted the scientists as they looked at the radar data. They knew that if the existence of sealed chambers beneath the mount became public, the result could be catastrophic. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Someone had built these chambers and then made sure no one would ever enter them again. It was here, deep below the holiest site on Earth, that archaeologists would later uncover what is now known as the Secret Scroll. But before they even reached that discovery, their scanners led them to something equally haunting. A shrine frozen in stone for 2,800 years, waiting to be found. The shrine that shouldn't exist. When archaeologists first lowered the scanning probe into the sealed chamber, they expected rubble and silence. What appeared on their screens instead made one of the lead researchers step back in disbelief. The chamber was not a ruin, it was intact. The walls, floor, and ceiling had not shifted even an inch in over 2,000 years. Inside, the sensors captured clear images of altars, stone basins, and what looked like ritual tools still resting in place, as if the worshippers had left one evening and never returned. The team quickly realized they were looking at a fully preserved shrine, untouched since the 8th century BCE. No one had expected to find an entire underground sanctuary hidden directly beneath the Temple Mount. Detailed imaging revealed 8 connected rooms carved precisely into the limestone bedrock. Each room followed a perfect symmetrical pattern, forming a complex layout that matched no known design from Jerusalem's surface temples. The altars showed dense reflective patches that appeared in the radar and spectral scans, which suggested hardened organic residue. Using high-resolution imaging, the team compared these readings with data from other excavated Iron Age shrines. The digital match was almost identical to animal fat and olive oil signatures, both known ingredients in ancient sacrifices. Traces of incense were also detected, along with crushed olive pits used in ritual lamps. The preservation was astonishing. Earthquakes, conquests, and centuries of construction above had not damaged this underground complex. It was as if time had deliberately avoided it. As the team examined the digital reconstructions, they realized that these chambers represented a form of worship that history had erased. The discovery directly challenged the biblical account of King Hezekiah's religious reforms. According to Scripture, Hezekiah destroyed every rival shrine in Judah to centralize worship in the Temple of Jerusalem. The Bible specifically states that he removed the high places, broke the sacred pillars, and cut down the Asherah poles to eliminate local cults. Yet this newly found shrine under the Temple Mount was not destroyed. It had been sealed. The evidence suggested that someone within the priesthood had hidden it intentionally rather than demolishing it. Archaeologists began comparing the site with other discoveries from ancient Judah. At Tel Arad, another sealed temple had been found in the desert with twin altars. The existence of those dual altars proved that multiple worship systems coexisted at the same time, despite official efforts to suppress them. Inscriptions discovered at Kuntilet Adrud in the Sinai Desert referred to Yahweh and his Asherah, showing that some followers of early Judaism may have still honored a female divine figure alongside Yahweh. These findings helped explain the mystery under the Temple Mount. The underground shrine might have been part of an older belief system that survived in secret after Hezekiah's reforms. Inside the rooms were ritual basins that still carried traces of wine and oil, standing stones that represented divine presence, and tools for offerings. The presence of domestic items like loom weights and pottery fragments suggested that these rituals were not only for priests, they were part of daily life for ordinary families. It appeared that people living near the temple had their own hidden way of praying and performing sacrifices beneath the official site of worship. The implication was staggering. It meant that while the great temple above served the official religion, another, quieter faith continued below it. It also explained why the shrine was sealed rather than smashed. The priests who hid it may have been trying to preserve their traditions in the face of reform, hoping one day they could be revived. This changed the understanding of ancient Jerusalem completely. Religion was not as unified or controlled as once believed. For believers, it was deeply unsettling. The Temple Mount had always been seen as the place of pure worship, but this shrine revealed a divided and secret religious world existing right beneath it. Amid all the ritual objects and artifacts, one item stood out more than any other. In the center of the shrine was a single, unmoved, massive standing stone that no king had dared to destroy. The standing stone that defied the king. The stone measured almost 10 feet tall, carved from a single block of limestone that had somehow remained completely upright through centuries of earthquakes and wars. The object was clearly a masabah, an ancient standing stone that early Israelites once used as a symbol of divine presence. What shocked everyone was not its size, but the fact that it was still there. According to the Bible, King Hezekiah had ordered every such stone to be destroyed during his religious reforms. Yet this one had survived, sealed beneath the Temple Mount, untouched for nearly 3,000 years. The team enhanced the radar images using spectral analysis. The data showed faint mineral traces that suggested the stone's surface had been coated with a metallic compound. When these readings were compared with known samples from other ancient sites, they closely matched the spectral signature of mercury. In ancient Mesopotamia and Canaan, mercury was used in rituals meant to bind or contain spirits. The discovery unsettled both the scientists and the historians who reviewed the data. It implied that the stone was not only sacred, but also functional. It might have been part of a ritual meant to seal something inside the chamber, rather than simply mark a place of worship. This possibility disturbed scholars familiar with the darker side of ancient Near Eastern religion. They recalled Phoenician beetles, known as living stones, which were believed to contain the essence of gods or other supernatural beings. Similar objects had been found in the city of Byblos and in Carthage, where priests performed offerings to keep the divine force within the stone under control. If the masabah under the Temple Mount served a similar purpose, it could mean that the shrine was not a sanctuary at all, but a containment site. The stone may not have represented the God of Israel, but something far older and more dangerous that the priests could not destroy. Biblical scholars began drawing connections between this finding and several cryptic passages in Scripture. The book of Isaiah describes fallen beings cast down to the earth and locked away by divine command. Genesis 6:4 speaks of the mighty ones of old, who were punished and bound. Later, Jewish texts such as the Book of Enoch describe watchers who were sealed beneath the mountains for disobeying God. The idea that the standing stone might be part of a structure designed to hold back something connected to these ancient traditions was enough to alarm even seasoned theologians. It suggested that Hezekiah's reforms may have involved more than eliminating rival shrines. They may have included sealing away forces his priests believed were real. Some historians pointed to a disturbing coincidence. In 701 BCE, when the Assyrian army besieged Jerusalem, historical records mention that Hezekiah's priests performed secret rituals in the temple courts to protect the city. No one ever described what those rituals were, but the sealed shrine and its standing stone now seem to offer an answer. Perhaps the priests had not been praying for victory. Perhaps they had been reinforcing a seal that already existed beneath the mount. The stone could have been part of that defense, a barrier meant to contain whatever was believed to dwell below. Fearing what might lie even deeper, the modern team turned back to their AI scans, hoping the next layer of data would provide answers. Instead, what they found next made everything far worse. The Chamber of the Warden. In early 2024, the research team activated the new phase of their scan beneath the Temple Mount. The AI-enhanced radar system began feeding back data that looked unlike anything they had seen before. At first, the screen filled with static. Then sharp geometric outlines began to form deep below the layers of rock. What the system revealed next made the room fall silent. Beneath the hidden shrine they had already mapped, the AI detected a perfectly circular chamber carved directly into the bedrock. Its diameter was exactly 10 feet across, and its walls appeared to be polished smooth, with no signs of damage or collapse. The structure was completely sealed, no tunnels or passageways connected to it, which made its existence almost impossible to explain. The precision of the chamber shocked both engineers and archaeologists. The smooth curvature and alignment to the cardinal points suggested advanced craftsmanship. According to every known record, Jerusalem's builders in 700 BCE lacked the tools to cut stone with that degree of accuracy. There were no signs of chisel marks or primitive cutting patterns that defined ancient construction. It looked engineered with technology far ahead of its time. The AI system also detected distinct layers within the structure. The outer layer was an unusually dense shell, while inside was an airtight void. At the center of that void, several solid objects appeared to be positioned symmetrically around a larger centerpiece. It looked deliberate, as if the builders had carefully arranged each item according to a hidden plan. At first, the team thought they had finally found the legendary Holy of Holies, but the next discovery proved they were terribly wrong. As the image sharpened, strange markings began to appear along the curved wall. The AI identified them as a primitive form of Paleo-Hebrew, one of the oldest known scripts in the region. Linguists translated the words almost immediately. The message was short and it was chilling. It read, "Here the warden stands guard. Do not open." The team fell silent. No one could understand why a sacred chamber beneath the Temple Mount would carry a warning like that. Ancient inscriptions usually praised God or described offerings. This one sounded like a threat. Inside the sealed space, the radar detected several distinct objects. In the center stood a large stone basin carved from a single block of rock. Around it lay smaller artifacts that looked like oil lamps. Their shapes were unusual, simpler than any from known temple periods, suggesting they belonged to a much earlier era. Spectral imaging identified traces of substances inside the basin. It contained particles of lead and mercury, both linked in ancient cultures to binding rituals and purification rites meant to trap or neutralize spiritual forces. Chemical readings also showed faint remnants of incense made from plants like mandrake and henbane, known in antiquity for their sedative and hallucinogenic effects. These materials had no connection to ordinary worship. They were associated with protection and containment. Historians compared the findings with other ancient texts. The Book of Enoch describes watchers, divine beings imprisoned beneath the earth. Mesopotamian myths speak of entities sealed away by priests using sacred metals. Even the Dead Sea Scrolls' War Scroll mentions a warden of the pit, a figure charged with guarding those who defied heaven. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Whatever purpose this chamber served, it was not built to welcome the divine. It was built to hold something back. The AI ran acoustic modeling to simulate how sound would move inside the circular chamber. The results added another layer of fear. The chamber was designed to trap vibration, keeping energy contained inside. It acted almost like an ancient soundproof vault. Every piece of evidence pointed toward the same terrifying conclusion. This was not a temple chamber. It was a prison cell, built to lock away something that was never meant to be released. The researchers could not go further without breaking the seal, and that was out of the question. Religious authorities and government officials quickly restricted access to all new data. The site was classified within days. But one detail kept circulating among the scientists who had seen the scans. Beneath the basin, the radar showed a small metallic capsule. It appeared to contain something rolled tightly inside. That object would soon become known as the Secret Scroll, and its contents would terrify everyone who tried to understand them. The scroll that should never be read. Hidden beneath layers of limestone and compacted sediment was a small metallic capsule. The AI identified it as a cylindrical container made of lead and encased in an outer shell of stone and hardened resin. It had been sealed with extraordinary precision. Every layer seemed designed to keep whatever was inside from ever being exposed to air or light again. When the digital imaging penetrated the first few millimeters of the casing, the researchers saw the unmistakable outline of a rolled scroll inside. AI-enhanced imaging showed faint markings on the outer layer. The inscriptions were not Hebrew or Aramaic, but a much older form of writing that predated both. Linguists recognized patterns similar to Akkadian binding texts, a type of script used in ancient Mesopotamia for rituals that restrained supernatural beings. The symbols were not random. They formed circular sigils that repeated around the edge of the scroll, just as protective charms did in other known apotropaic or warding scrolls. The implication was clear. This was not a record or a message meant to be read. It was an object of containment. The scroll itself appeared to be made of papyrus blended with mineral dust, a composition that matched protective scrolls discovered near the Dead Sea. Those scrolls had been found at Qumran, where ancient priests hid texts they considered too dangerous for ordinary use. This connection raised serious questions. The Dead Sea materials dated back to the same broad era, but this capsule seemed far older. Even through the layers of metal, imaging showed the faint texture of the papyrus fibers still intact, protected by the lead's density and the absence of oxygen. The top of the scroll carried a symbol that startled the scholars who examined it. It closely resembled one found on the famous copper scroll of Qumran, a text that listed hidden temple treasures. But this version was not about treasure. It contained 3 words written in an archaic dialect. The translation read, "Seal of the Deep Ones." No one could explain what the phrase meant, but the combination of lead, resin, and ritual language all pointed toward one purpose. It was a seal, not a message. When translators began working on the visible portions of the outer layer, they managed to read only a few short lines before the scan reached its limit. The most distinct phrase read, "When the light breaks the seal, the warden's hand shall fall." Beyond that point, the metal casing blocked all imaging. The team tried multiple scan frequencies, but the lead and resin layers were too dense for deeper access. Any attempt to increase power risked damaging the scroll itself. Since excavation was forbidden and no physical samples could be taken, the rest of the text remained completely unreadable. The archaeologists had reached the boundary of what technology could safely reveal. Word of the discovery spread quickly among religious authorities, and all insisted that the scroll remain sealed. Why they're terrified to open it? After the first translation attempts, the project was quietly shut down. The data was locked, the chamber coordinates classified, and every scientist involved reportedly signed new confidentiality agreements under supervision. The explanation was that the site posed structural and political risks, but privately something else was happening. Religious authorities had issued the same warning. They said disturbing the seal could undo the covenant of containment. No one knew exactly what that phrase meant, but it was enough to halt all remaining analysis. Reports soon began leaking from within the small group of scholars who had seen the raw scans. According to them, linguistic consultants had decoded a few additional words from the scroll's damaged edges. Those partial lines mentioned the fallen who sleep beneath Zion. The reference sent shockwaves through both religious and academic circles. In biblical tradition, the fallen refers to the Nephilim, mysterious beings described in Genesis 6 as the offspring of divine entities and humans. Later texts say they were imprisoned in darkness until judgment. If the scroll was truly a binding text referring to these beings, it meant the Temple Mount could have been built over the place where they were sealed. Scholars struggled to process the implications. Some argued that it might connect to the Book of Giants, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls that describes the Nephilim awaiting punishment underground. Others pointed to older Mesopotamian sources that mention the Anunnaki, powerful deities or spirits banished to the underworld after defying the higher gods. The parallels were disturbing. The languages were different, but the story was the same. Divine or semi-divine beings locked beneath the earth, watched over by guardians. The phrase, The warden stands guard from the chamber inscription suddenly seemed more literal than symbolic. If this connection was true, the cultural consequences would be enormous. The Temple Mount is the single most sacred location in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. If it was revealed that its foundation was not a sanctuary but a containment structure for something ancient and forbidden, the shock would be unprecedented. Every major belief system built around the Mount's holiness would be thrown into crisis. Historians pointed out that this was not the first time legends hinted at such a possibility. Beneath the dome of the rock lies a natural cave long known as the Well of Souls, where ancient traditions claim the spirits of the dead wait for judgment. Ethiopian scripture mentions Enochian pits beneath sacred mountains where the watchers were chained. Even Islamic texts describe the mount as a place between worlds where heaven and earth meet. Across cultures and eras, holy ground has often been linked with the idea of sealing or guarding something powerful. As of now, the scroll lies sealed beneath Jerusalem's bedrock, guarded by silence, fear, and faith itself. But if the seal ever breaks, humanity may finally learn the reason the Temple Mount was built not to praise heaven, but to keep hell contained. What do you think about the secret scroll? Comment down below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.